Hi, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Full Court Podcast with your host, Orazio Cauchi. As we continue on our journey through Europe and the biggest European basketball countries, we've been to Turkey, we've been to Italy, we've been to Spain. Now is the time to land a little bit in Israel to touch base there. And of course, to do that, I'm very happy to have here Israeli journalist and my friend, Mosed Barda. Moses, welcome.
Thanks for having me. How's life?
So far, so good, man. How are you?
I ain't complaining.
That's great, man. That's great.
I mean, weather could be a bit warm, warmer, but
it could always be a little bit warmer, man.
Yeah. On the other hand, it could definitely be colder. So, we should be just grateful for things being the way they are.
Exactly. So with Moses, of course, we're going to focus a little bit on Israeli basketball. And to start, of course, we are going to begin with Maccabi Tel Aviv and their situation so far. Of course, it's been kind of a ups and downs situation for Maccabi in this season so far, especially in EuroLeague. There was a slow start, which was kind of predictable considering that the team basically had no preseason because of COVID issues. And so during the preseason, basically the team couldn't reach other countries to do the preseason games that they were supposed to do. So there were very, very limited preseason for them, very limited trainings. But after a slow start, it looks clear that Maccabi was improving, was getting better, especially in some also of the new players that struggle a little bit at the beginning, and now they look much more comfortable out there. I'm thinking especially about Keenan Evans, which was one of the main addition in the backcourt for the team. But I wanted to ask you, of course, Moses, about so far your perspective about Maccabi Tel Aviv. As I said, it looks like things are improving on several fronts. But what's your general idea about Maccabi Tel Aviv so far, how they're performing, and what's the general vibe, around the team so far?
Well, the best way to put it, I think, it's complicated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've heard that one before, didn't we?
Yeah.
In terms of basketball, of course, we're only talking basketball here. Here's the thing. It's like, yeah, we knew they were going to have a very bad start to the EuroLeague. We expected them to have, growing pains because they got quite a few EuroLeague debutants on the team, from the domestic core to some of the, obviously some of the foreign players.
Yeah.
Others were more experienced, so, it was okay. But in general, it's like you've seen how Maccabi could be in their worst and what can they do at their best. Or what was close to their best at that point in time. Obviously, right now, it's somewhere in between because you saw the game against Madrid and you saw a great game plan executed.
Yeah.
Eventually, Madrid did Madrid. There was also that issue with Tomar Hurtel, but at the end of the day, it's, the business of basketball, especially in the EuroLeague, is the one where you have to gather wins. You got to get as much wins as you can. So, eventually, everyone is judged by the amount of wins they're getting. They've just lost domestically to Ness Tziono, so you're thinking, okay, they could be better. They need to kind of refine their groove, kind of thing. I don't think though there's, at least for now, any reason for concern or serious concern. They're okay. Like they should be okay. They got the offensive talent. Guys, like you see them, they, what the biggest word here is, I think, consistency, and they need it from a lot of guys.
Yeah. And of course, there have been some roster movements already. They signed Lesor when Zizic was still out with an injury. Now Lesor is gone, and now there was the injury to Sorkin, who's going to be out for a while. And do you see them because of this trying to maybe make another move for like a short-term move to strengthen a little bit the roster to add a little bit more depth, especially in the front court, or do you believe they're gonna stay this way?
Look, the biggest thing here is with Sorkin is that he's a domestic player, and in order to get their, it's a tricky situation because when you have a domestic guy getting injured and you have in your domestic competition you have rules where you have to play with such and such amount of players that are obviously Israelis and such amount of foreigners. The biggest thing here is that their rotation, especially domestically, is getting shorter. Like the bench is not as deep. And if we're honest about it, when you look at Maccabi's domestic players, I don't like, those comparisons, domestic, foreign, but say that specifically with Sorkin, he was perhaps in the best shape from all the Israelis on the team. This is why I think it's a huge loss for them, especially now that you have to when you're looking ahead and we're talking now, okay, they're going to be like somewhere between 3 to 5, 6 weeks he's out. So now what? And then he has to get back into game rhythm, which also that could be an issue. Do they need to bring someone? They brought in a sword when they thought that Zizha, that's like his nickname, Ante Zizic, was supposed to be out for I think also for 6 weeks, and he was supposed he's the big guy, alongside Jalen Reynolds. Like they got a decent front court, but half of it was gone for 6 weeks. I think in the EuroLeague they might actually somehow manage to when you have the 4 men stepping up, you can somehow kind of contain that loss. But domestically, that's going to be an issue. And when you have, some guys playing, overplaying because of everything, then this could be an issue. Are they bringing someone? I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. As of now, they're not. Again, as of now, they're not expected to bring anyone. Okay.
Looking a little bit about the future of Maccabi Tel Aviv, with some of their players, with Scotty Wilbekin, with Ante Zizic, and also with the head coach situation with Yanis Fairopoulos, it looks like Maccabi has the core also for the future already in place. Of course, you need to, try to lock down those guys even for the coming years. There is a contract to be discussed and everything. But do you believe that, especially when you look at this, at these guys, Wilbekin, Zizic, Coach Fairopoulos, do you believe that in a way Maccabi has already his future inside the team?
That is a great question, because when you look at Maccabi, it's like you're seeing finally, when you're striving for great things, mm-hmm. you need to have a core. It's not like, you can do whatever you want, like on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
True. Yes. We've gotten used to seeing teams like Baskonia that made crazy changes to the rosters, but and somehow managed to stay competitive in the EuroLeague. Maybe not as much this year, and the year before that, again, not as much. But we were seeing more and more, like if you want to be one of the top clubs in the competition, you really got to have a long-term based core. And we were seeing this beautifully with Madrid. We're seeing this beautifully with Barcelona. Obviously, the key word here is resources. If you have resources, you can do whatever you want. But having a guy like Kante, especially with the year he's been having so far, and Scotty that is contributing, he keeps showing things that you're like, okay, I knew he can do that, but now he's doing that even more. It's like in last year, people thought that it was like more scoring oriented. The year before that, it was like him and Dorsey were kind of one of the best 1-2 punches in the EuroLeague. And, if you talked about Maccabi's future, the 1920 season in general would have been was supposed to be where they laid their foundations mm-hmm. towards the next, what should have been, or could have been, maybe that's a better word for it, could have been their next dynasty, because they were, let me remind everyone, they wanted to extend Quincy Acey before, the injury that he had, and that they really started making moves. Ante Žižić was also, on their top list, like already in December of that year. Like that double rounder of when they faced both Barcelona and Milan in Tel Aviv, that was where they laid their groundwork for the next few years. But then COVID kind of happened. Who saw that coming, huh? And look, it's where they are now. Yeah, clearly you can see that the core is Scotty, is Ante, obviously some of the Israeli guys, and obviously you can see that some of the foreign guys, they'll probably try and get them to stay as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. Like, honestly, how many teams that made it to the Final Four that not had a roster that was running for a few years?
Yeah, exactly. You need that to go further. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have that continuation.
Yeah.
Eventually, it's inevitable.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on a little bit from Maccabi Tel Aviv, another interesting club that has been making quite some noise, especially over the summer, because of their additions to the roster. Some of them, they were pretty big names coming from the NBA. We're talking about Hapoel Jerusalem. Their summer was quite busy, with the additions of Ton Maker, Anthony Bennett, Sean Kilpatrick, big names for the European basketball. Bennett and Tom Maker, former NBA players. Kilpatrick, of course, has his share of experience in the NBA. The beginning of the season was quite difficult for them. They went through also a coaching change with Oren Aimel, who was fired, and now they decided to have Yotam Alperin, the former player, as their head coach. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alperin was already inside the club, right?
Yeah, he was in the front office.
Yeah, exactly. But now it looks like the situation maybe is a little bit more stabilized in a way. And they're also having a great contribution from Jalen Adams, who was probably one of the additions that was less talk about it, but is a player with great scoring abilities, who's helping them a lot. What's your opinion so far about them, and especially about their structure? Because it looks like they are one of those clubs that constantly changes from season to season. There is not a lot of continuity over there in a way.
Again, that would have been the case in the 2019-2020 season, mm-hmm. where they had a good core with James Fildane and Jacob Brown. Obviously, they had Sue Brimo, who's back on the team, by the way. And it seemed like as if they were supposed to do some good things. Again, then COVID happened. But, it happened to the entire continent eventually, to the world. I'm saying continent, it's, but, this year, first of all, I want to, stay with your Tom Alperin thing, because every now and then you get these magical moments where you didn't expect things, right? Mm-hmm. And he was supposed to be the interim coach. That was
exactly.
And by the looks of it, I'm not saying that under coach Holon, the team was not happy. But just seeing them play in Turkey at Karşıyaka, and you see the guys having fun on the court. And whenever you see players having fun on the court, something good, something positive is happening. And this might just end up to be the beginning of a very successful coaching career. Because usually, there's the new coach effect that lasts 1-2 games. Maybe at best, if you're lucky. If you're lucky, it's 1-2 games. And Jerusalem, they practically made no changes. Yes, they add some muscles with Brimo, and that counts for a lot because they were kind of lacking in that department. But when you look at the guys that delivered, it was Segev on the defensive end, it was Adam Ariel and Jalen, guys that were already there. And sometimes, if clubs are not, they're not kind of well adjusted to have that spotlight on them, especially when you bring the number one pick of the draft, and you bring Bennett, you bring Tom Maker. Obviously, for us guys that have been following them, that have been kind of scouting them in a way, even. So kind of what to expect, but the level of anticipation and expectation from such guys when you bring them in, that can put a whole lot of pressure on a team.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to handle it, this could be a bit destructive. Now, I'm not saying that was the case. I'm just saying that right now, yes, Jerusalem are doing better. They're still in critical condition, as if we're talking just the BCL. But it looks like they're going to make it after all. Again, and I know that with us jinxing guys all over the place, left and right, it's very well possible that me saying this could be like the end of their European campaign. But it's it looks like they're in a better place. They are finding out themselves, like they're figuring themselves out, which is good. And yeah, I think you've chose the perfect word. Like they're stabilized. Like he stabilized the situation that they're at right now, and that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great for them. Another team that I wanted to talk with you a little bit about it is Hapoel Holon, because especially of their decision to hire an Italian coach this summer. They hired Maurizio Buscaglia as their new coach. Of course, Buscaglia has a great reputation in Italy. He has been the coach of Aquila Basket Trento for so many years. He brought them to 2 consecutive Serie A finals. And for a team like Trento, who doesn't have the biggest budget in the Serie A, that is definitely a great accomplishment. They've been a stable team also in Europe, playing in Eurocup for several years. And now Buscaglia is also the head coach of the Netherlands national team. And so I wanted to ask you how it was the reaction a little bit back there in Israel to the decision of hiring a foreign coach like Maurizio, and how he has been his experience so far in your opinion with the team.
Well, it's 2 different questions. The thing with hiring a foreign coach, I mean, that's nothing new, essentially. Maccabi Tel Aviv have signed, throughout the years, many foreign coaches. As for Holon, obviously they had coach Stefanos Dedas prior to coach Buscaglia, and now they have him. So I don't, it didn't create a lot of headlines in terms of, a foreign coach came to the country. Again, I don't think that should even though I don't think that should be the case, because first of all, he has a great resume, If you're good, I believe if you're good, you deserve the chance, you deserve the shot. Why not? If you can lead someone to success, you can lead someone to greatness. It's also, it means that you're great, and it's a win-win for everyone at the end of the day. So as for him, I think it was kind of regular. I'd say that in terms of how it was portrayed, it was like people were just trying to understand how is Buscaglia in comparison to Dedas, because Coach Dedas was very well known to be he wasn't soft spoken in a lot of ways. He was very well known, very emotional coach, very temperamental coach in a lot of ways, but he had a beautiful brand of basketball. And now you see a coach who's coming from Italy, who's known for pretty much the exact opposite. If we're talking professionally speaking, going from a perimeter play to a team that is much, much more defensive oriented, very much more intensive style of play. If we're talking from a guy who obviously Buscaglia is portrayed more as a soft-spoken guy in comparison to Deda. So at the end of the day, it was all about the results, I think. And Holon had a very good season last year, a very good season. And I'd say that perhaps one of the most like, the hardest thing perhaps when you're coming into a new place is to replace someone who succeeded just before. Because I think we've seen that a lot, even in the EuroLeague, that success ended up being, your biggest enemy the following year. And I think that for now, we are 8 games into the domestic season, and Holon are expected to play their, they played, I think, 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
3 games in the BCL. They're supposed to play the 4 against the Rushafaka. Here's the thing: they're doing good in the BCL. They're doing good in the Israeli domestic league. So I'd say all in all, it's okay. Obviously, Holon they don't have the biggest budget in the country, and I'd say he's doing good. I really think he's doing good. Like, and we're talking with guys that have yet to find their rhythm. So that's, in a way that's impressive. Even I'd go as far and say that with Coach Buscaglia.
Yeah, and I'm always happy, for Coach Maurizio, because he's also a great person. So I'm happy that so far his experience in Israel has been good. And now, moving on a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit about one of the most exciting, let's say, prospects in Israeli basketball for the coming future. We're talking, of course, about Yam Madar, the player of Partizan Belgrade. He moved to Partizan this summer. Of course, he was already also well known internationally because he was selected by the Boston Celtics in the NBA draft, and even a lot of Boston Celtic fans, they have quite the expectations on Madar for the future. They believe he can become an important part of their backcourt in the future. But of course, there was a lot of noise around him this summer because he made this big move to Partizan Belgrade to work with Coach Obradovic. And he was brought in to be an important player in their backcourt, to play also alongside Dallas Moore, to have a major role in the team. And so far his numbers have been decent, maybe not super, but he's been playing important minutes for the team, both in Eurocup and in the ABA League. What I wanted to ask you was, what's like the perception around Madar in Israel? Is he actually seen as one of the main pieces for the Israeli national team going forward? One of the biggest hopes for Israeli basketball going forward?
Okay, for sure. He's looked upon as one of the future players of the national team.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's fair, towards him to say, he's the biggest, because, it's putting insanely amount of pressure on a kid. Is he good? Of course. Does he have potential? No doubt about it. There are hopes for the future, because when you think about it, when you look at the future looks like this. The future sees Yovel Zusman, right? Tamir Blatt, Noam Dovrat, Danny Avdia. He will be able to join the team, and obviously Yam Madar. And we're talking the generation that kind of made it back to back with the under-20 team.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously expectations are accordingly. Now, assuming that Guy Panini will probably play for another 20, 25 years, give or take. He's endless. I know that wasn't a good joke. Like, he's 35, 36, Guy Panini, and he's still. I love seeing him running around, knocking down those threes. It's crazy. But when you look at the future, that's how the future is supposed to look.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that the expectations from Yam and Danny in the national team would be immense. And you can say it's rightfully so, because these two guys, as kids, they led the national team in the under-20. Danny was the 9th overall pick by the Wizards. Yam Madar was selected, like you mentioned, by the Celtics, and it only makes sense. As for his time with Belgrade, it's first of all, he's still young, so he has a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And when you think about like under Coach Obradovic, what I liked about Yam is like he's a raw stallion. Like he's a kid he's got killer instinct.
Yeah.
On the court, and that is something it's so sometimes seeing it leaves you speechless. But here's the big thing with Coach Obradovic, like he is like usually he's not known for playing like this kind of game. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a controlled game with Coach Obradovic.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something that's a bit controversial. I think that clash of styles, I think this is the best thing possible because usually guys when they are outside their comfort zone, they don't tend to shine. It's like, but I do believe that because Yam he's very well adjusted to a very specific style of game. When you see, like when you connect this with Coach Zach, you know the following. Like if he manages to to also add that style of game, like the more controlled half court set kind of game, he's like that is for him. It is one of the most amazing things because it's going to add another dimension to his game that wasn't necessarily not there to begin with, but it wasn't it's like I said, he's more known as a killer instinct kind of kid instead rather than the so when you're adding more dimensions to your game, more versatility, and not when we're saying versatility, it doesn't always have to mean like he used to finish it with his right hand, now he's finishing with both, like he can do it with his left, he's shooting better from the three. Like versatility is mostly that, but not just. If you can also control the tempo. Jay Cohen once said about Denny Avdia, just before the draft, that I think with him, it's like he learned to play slower in a way. And it wasn't about like, the pace of running. It's just like the decision-making phase of how you become a better player. And this is why I think that even though his numbers are not flashy right now, he's probably in an amazing situation. He can get so much from that will do so good for his future that I just want to see how it goes on for him moving forward.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree that playing for Coach Obradovic and playing in a different style of basketball than he was used to it will definitely help him going forward because as you said, is a kind of a relentless player. He never stops. He has this very particular style. So is a warrior in a way, but of course, if you want to become a very established player, you need to understand how to play in a much more controlled environment in a way. And I believe that Coach Obradovic is definitely the right person to teach him that.
Exactly. I mean, I have a question for you then. We've seen obviously Zach has like 9 EuroLeague championships. And look, we have to be honest here. I don't see a situation where Partizan are not in the EuroLeague next year through the Euro Cup for sure. It's like, it's a great competition this year, very competitive. The format has changed, and we're all come on, let's put it out there. If you're not expecting to see a finals between, a final series between Virtus Bologna and Partizan, what are we doing here exactly? Like this series, like you want to watch. I'm not saying that potentially there cannot be a different one that would be, as exciting for the very least. But for now, this is like the expectation. And so if we are, if that's what we're expecting, and we're expecting to see Coach Zach next year in the EuroLeague, what do you think we'll do budget-wise, and will we see Zach winning his 10th title in the EuroLeague as a head coach in Partizan to complete the symmetry of it all? And how will the day after look?
I mean, if he will be able to do that, bring back Partizan to EuroLeague and then actually be able to win it all with the team, if I were him, I would just stop coaching right away, because at that point he is a certified legend. He doesn't need to achieve anything else, because of course he came to Partizan, to join a challenge. He knew that it wasn't going to be easy for him, because of course this is a very, very young team. They had the opportunity, of course, to build a great roster, because they have an increased budget, basically because of his presence. Because without Obradovic, you're not going to have the type of budget that they are having, this season. So, of course, as you said, the most anticipated final will be between Virtus and Partizan, because those are the two most anticipated teams. They have great rosters. Virtus is having now a little bit of issues because of the injuries. They didn't have a lot of luck so far with the injuries, Mannion and many others. But going back to Obradovic, if he will be able to do something like this at that point, I mean, he has nothing to ask anymore to European basketball. He has done everything that he could. And when it comes to Partizan and their possible participation to the EuroLeague next season, I expect even an increased budget from this season. Like, if they were able to do this for a Eurocup team, I mean, when you go to the EuroLeague, you want to do even better, and especially when you come from the Eurocup, because for the Eurocup teams with the current rules, the only way to secure a spot even for the following year is to go to the playoffs. Otherwise, there is no guarantee that you will be there next season too. So absolutely, I have a very, very high expectation for Coach Obradovic and Partizan Belgrade.
Yeah, it's going to be epic. Like, I can't wait. This is the story taken straight out of the fairy tales. Like, if it will happen, like them making it to the to the EuroLeague and then winning it.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens, they need to make a movie out of it. No doubt
30
about
for
it.
30 for sure. Like, something around that area.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So we reached the end for this brand new episode of Full Court Podcast. Of course, it was a pleasure to talk with you, Moses. Thank you very much for hopping in and give us your perspective about Israeli basketball. Thank you very much, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. And as always, we'll probably talk tonight, I guess, around 3, 4, maybe a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So for this episode of Full Court Podcast is everything. Before we finish, just a small reminder that now Full Court Podcast is also available on Spotify with the audio version, of course, of the podcast. And of course, our reminder to follow BasketNews.com, where you will find a lot of very interesting contents, video, test articles, everything that you can ask. And okay, so for Orazio Cauchi and Full Court Podcast is everything. We'll see you very soon.